Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 8th of July of 2026. Today we have a lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine. We will start with the NATO Summit. According to information we have, the United States of America is going to provide Ukrainians a license to produce PAC-3 interceptors. We're going to give you a license to make Patriots. This way he can't complain that we are not giving them enough. Make them yourself. This is the statement of the President of the United States of America. We need Patriots too. I think they can produce them very quickly once we explain it. So this is another important thing, and as the Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated, this is a controlled escalation. Trump and Ukraine strikes on Russian refineries. It's an escalation that can help lead to an end of this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So this is the situation, and this means that the Ukrainians most likely have already enough of equipment and facilities, probably somewhere in the western parts of Ukraine, that are able to start production of PAC-3 interceptors. So today it was just a legal situation between the presidents of Ukraine and the United States of America, where they basically signed an agreement on this matter. Most likely the Ukrainians have already these facilities, and most likely in coming days they will start production of PAC-3 interceptors. Many people believe that the Ukrainians will be able to start production of PAC-3 interceptors for Patriot systems just within years, but once again, if something like this happens, this means that the Ukrainians have already enough of capabilities to start doing this. Once again, this is a controlled escalation between the Russian Federation, Ukraine, and the United States of America, and this is not the first time when the escalation was controlled by the Western countries. Since the beginning of the special military operation, we have already faced 4 or 5 times when the conflict between Russia and Ukraine was controlled, was escalated in controllable way. We're talking about first days and first time when the United States of America provided Abrams tanks, then it was HIMARS missiles, then it was ATACMS missiles, and then it was F-16 aircrafts, and now we see that the United States of America is going to provide, or has already provided, the license for PAC-3 interceptors. As for the Russian side, now the Russians have 2 options, because when talking about the language of diplomacy, if somebody starts a controlled escalation, this means that you have just one option: to start the controlled escalation from your side as well. And now we'll see whether the Russians are able to escalate the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, and what kind of tools the Russians are going to use for this. During the previous 12 hours, we received a very interesting article, for example, on this matter. According to pro-Ukrainian, pro-Western sources, Russia deploys powerful electronic jammers to disrupt Musk's Starlink systems. Russian forces are deploying advanced electronic jamming systems to disrupt Elon Musk's Starlink satellite network, aiming to neutralize remote communication links that power Ukraine's high-effective mid-strike drones campaign. So this is a very important situation, and if you remember, several weeks ago we were talking that the Russians began deploying of these systems between Berdyansk, Mariupol, Melitopol, between Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Crimea regions. And let's take a look at this article once again. I remember that since the beginning of May of 2026, the Russians have deployed probably 2 systems of this type, and probably this is the video about the situation. Yes, and this is the video when the Russians, this video was published on the 17th of June of 2026, and in this video we can see how the Russians deployed the Starlink jammer in the area of the city of Primorsk, but the Ukrainians discovered this system and attacked with drone and destroyed it. And that was one of the biggest mistakes from the Russian side, because the Russians Russians deployed this anti-Starlink equipment with the purpose to stop the Ukrainian fuel war. If you remember, the June of 2026 was the month when the Ukrainians established total dominating over the main supply lines between Crimea, Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, and that is why the Russians were trying to stabilize the situation. And if you remember, the Russians deployed at least 2 systems of this type with the purpose to break the situation. But the problem is that when talking about Crimea, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, the Ukrainians through these territories have possibilities use not just Starlink satellite systems for communication, but Ukrainians have possibilities to use classical systems like regular drones or radio connections and so on. So that is why those anti-Starlink systems of Russia were destroyed by the Ukrainians. So that is why the Russians decided to remove these systems, and the Russians began deploying these systems in the central part of Russia just with one purpose: to protect and to secure the main military facilities and the main oil infrastructural objects. And the Western sources reported that the Russians have already deployed 20 equipments of this type, 20 anti-Starlink jammers, but the problem is that these systems can cover just 20 square kilometers, which means that if Russians want, let's say, to cover and to protect this territory that you can see right now in front of your screens against the Starlink system, the Russians need thousands of these systems, thousands, not 20, but thousands. So which means that the Russians are just at the beginning of this process, and obviously it will take up to a year to cover, to protect these territories. But the problem is, and the question is, whether the Russians have this time or not. Meanwhile, the Russians continue bombing and attacking the territory of Ukraine, and during the previous 24 hours, the Russians deployed several missiles, Iskander missiles, and the Russians used hundreds of drones. And let's discuss this in details. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians attacked the city of Kyiv, and this is already a third attack within since the beginning of this month on the territory of the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv. This time the Russians deployed, let's say, a big attack. This wasn't a massive attack or a mega attack. This was just a big attack. The Russians used 8 missiles of Iskander type, and the Russians used hundreds of drones. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine this morning reported that the Russians deployed 176 air vehicles to attack the territory of Ukraine, and the Russians were attacking just 2 objects on the territory of the city. The first object is located in the northeastern parts of the capital of Ukraine. We're talking about this facility, and this morning a fire anomaly was recorded, and it seems that the Russians destroyed this logistic hub. As a result of attack, a fire broke out immediately. Here we can see the aftermath of a missile strike in the Nizhnekamsk district of the city of Kyiv, and here we can see how the fire crews were trying to extinguish the fire. The second area that was attacked by Russians is the southwestern parts of the city of Kyiv. We're talking about these territories, and even from this angle we can see a lots of facilities, a lots of barracks, a lots of buildings, and the most important, a lots of vehicles that were used by the Ukrainians, and we have a lots of trucks. This territory was attacked also by Russians, and up to 6 fire anomalies were recorded through this territory, which means that a lot of buildings were attacked by Russians. Once again, they used 8 Iskander missiles. And during the day, we received lots of videos about explosions and secondary detonations. In this video, we can see an explosion on the territory of this facility. The Russians managed to hit something. Furthermore, right before we started making this video, pro-Ukrainian sources reported that the Russians have prepared the next wave of attack, massive attack, which means that there are very high chances that between the 8th and the 9th of July of 2026, the Russians would attack the city of Kyiv with dozens of missiles and hundreds of drones. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to happen next. Meanwhile, during the NATO summit, the Ukrainians also decided to show their strong cards, and during the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians were attacking deep inside of the territory of Russia. The Ukrainians used also hundreds of drones to attack the territory of Russia. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that during the previous 24 hours, the Russians destroyed around 600 of drones that were launched by the Ukrainians, and several drones of the armed forces of Ukraine managed to break through Russia's defense and to hit several facilities. The Ukrainians attacked the city of Saratov, and we have videos where we can see Russian drones flying over the city of Saratov, and here we can see the work of the Russian air defense forces. And you know that this is a very important attack, because every time before any massive attack that the Russians have carried out since the beginning of the special military operation, the Ukrainians always attack the city of Saratov and the Saratov oil refinery. And due to the fact that the Ukrainians did that during the previous 24 hours, we can make a conclusion that most likely the massive attack in coming hours is inevitable. Furthermore, the Ukrainians attacked in the area of the settlement of Nizhnekamsk. The Ukrainians tried to attack these chemical plants, and we have lots of videos where we can see Ukrainian drones maneuvering in the sky of the settlement of Nizhnekamsk, trying to first of all approach and then to hit this facility. As a result of attack, this chemical plant was damaged, and we have this video where we can see a fire. Another important situation is that the Ukrainians attacked facilities through the southern parts of Russia, and we're talking about this gas compressing station. As a result of attack, this object of export infrastructure was damaged and probably destroyed. Another important area, probably another critical area, is the Sea of Azov. The situation here is very difficult, and if you remember, we have already discussed the situation in this area, and during the previous 24 hours we received additional updates about the situation in the area or in the Sea of Azov. So what is happening in this area? First of all, yesterday pro-Ukrainian sources published this video where we can see dozens of tankers and vessels in the area of the Sea of Azov waiting for their turn to cross the Strait of Kerch, and when the Ukrainians noted that the Russians concentrated dozens of trucks with fuel or with oil in this area, the Ukrainians began bombing them and attacking them. As a result of the first day of attack, the Ukrainians damaged, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, 8 vehicles, and we have this a satellite picture where a fire anomaly was recorded. Today, a day after, between the 7th and the 8th of July of 2026, the Ukrainians carried out another attack in the same area. And here we have more vessels and tankers that were damaged and destroyed by the Ukrainians. Later, pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian sources published these satellite pictures where we can see the concentration of vessels and tankers to the north of the Strait of Kerch. And obviously the Ukrainians would attack every single vessel in this area. The main problem for Russians right now, and why this situation is happening, is that these commercial vessels are not able to cross the Strait of Kerch with the purpose to enter the Black Sea and to continue and to proceed further in the direction of international waters, and then further in the direction of waters of Turkey where they would be protected. The main problem is that the Ukrainians blocked the Strait of Kerch and deployed significant number of Navy drones to the south of the Strait of Kerch with the purpose not to allow the Russians to leave these territories. This video was published today, and here we can see a tanker of the Russian Shadow Fleet that was struck in the Black Sea by the drone of the armed forces of Ukraine. So basically, the Russians are blocked in this area. Today, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians published dozens of episodes of how they were attacking all these drones in the area of the Black Sea with Lancet drones trying to secure the eastern parts of the Black Sea and to secure the road for the vessels. As of the end of the 8th of July of 2026, nobody knows for sure whether the Russians managed to secure this territory or not, and obviously we will understand this during the next night, because most likely the Ukrainians will continue attacking vessels in the city with the purpose not to allow even a single vessel to leave the Azov Sea. So let's wait and see what is going to happen next, and most likely as the Russians will retaliate, and most likely the Russians will attack the city of Odessa, and most likely the Russians will attack the city of Kyiv. As for the Odessa region, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians began attacking this region, and as a result of attack, a gas station was destroyed. Furthermore, the Russians attacked the city of Odessa itself. Lots of updates were published, and most likely the Russians will intensify their attacks in this area. Furthermore, the Russians attacked the cities of Zaporizhzhia and Dnipro. More objects of logistics were destroyed by Russians, more logistic hubs were damaged, more gas stations were damaged. But you know that when talking about gas stations these days, we start receiving less and less reports on this matter. It seems that the Russians have already dealt the critical damage to the armed forces Ukraine with these gas stations, and now the Russians began searching and attacking some other objects. And as for the targets of the previous 24 hours, we see that the Russians intensified their attacks on Ukrainian locomotives and trains. During the previous 48 hours, lots of videos were published on this matter. All these videos means that the Ukrainians right now are trying to bring as many as possible arms and weapons to the line of combat contact and between the cities of Dnipro, Zaporizhzhia and Kharkiv, and the Russians attack these locomotives and trains with the purpose to destroy Ukraine's logistics completely. This is a very important video, by the way, and in this video we can see how the Russians attacked another locomotive that the Ukrainians were trying to hide below the bridge in the central part of the settlement of Lazova, but it didn't help and the Russians destroyed it. If Ukrainians lose their locomotives, it would be very difficult for the Ukrainians to replace them. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, lots of interesting updates were recorded. The Russians continue attacking the northern regions. Lots of fire anomalies were detected. Lots of objects were destroyed that Ukrainians could use for the military purposes. And small changes on the ground were also recorded. And these are the changes on the ground between the dates. The Russians continue their offensive operation in the area of the settlements of Olanova and Bachevsk. This is the most northeastern parts of Sumy region. As for the Sumy region itself, during the previous 12 hours, no changes were recorded. As for the Kharkiv direction, as for this territory, we have just a very important update that the Russians destroyed another gas station in the most northern parts of the settlement. Here we can see how the Russians attacked the gas station just with a regular FPV drone, which means that the Russians don't even need to use Garant drones or missiles to hit gas stations. They can use just regular fiber optic drones. Furthermore, the Russians, according to the group of forces north, improved their positions around the settlement of Belый Kolodец. But as you can see, as of the 8th of July of 2026, we don't have reports confirming additional changes or mappers that provided these changes. So as for the previous 24 hours, the minimal number of changes were recorded, by the way. Now let's move further. The Slavyansk Kramatorsk agglomeration, as we discussed during the previous 24 hours, the first sabotage and reconnaissance groups of the armed forces of the Russian Federation were recorded around the Slavyansk power station, and today we received additional reports on this matter. Pro-Ukrainian sources continue confirming this situation. Furthermore, and the most important thing is that the first sabotage and reconnaissance groups of the armed forces of the Russian Federation were also recorded in the area of the settlement of Vasilievka Pustosh. So pro-Ukrainian sources began reporting that the sabotage and reconnaissance groups of the armed forces of the Russian Federation are here, and this is already the northeastern part of the Kramatorsk, of the city of Kramatorsk. So which means, and as we discussed during the previous videos, very likely that the battle for the city of Kramatorsk, or at least for its eastern parts, could start much earlier than the battles for the cities of Slavyansk and Drushkovka. If Russians continue improving their positions through the city of Kramatorsk, they would be able to cut the Slavyansk-Konstantinovka direction into two smaller pieces, and then they would be able to handle with every single piece separately, using the Kramatorsk as a base for the major and general battle of the entire special military operation. As for the Dobropolye direction, during the previous 12 hours, additional strikes and attacks were recorded from the Russian side between the cities of Dobropolye and Grishna, but without changes. As for the Zaporizhzhia direction, right before we started making this video, several sources, pro-Ukrainian sources, reported and published a video with Ukrainian soldiers on the territory of the settlement of Novokhatske with the Ukrainian flag. So we will analyze this video, but probably tomorrow we will adjust the map and we will color these villages like Tolstoye, Podubne, Novokhatske as the territory under complete Ukraine control. So, which means that most likely talks and rumors about the Ukrainian counter-offensive operation has some connections with the reality. As for the Zaporizhzhia direction, during the previous 12 hours, just small changes were recorded through the city of Stepneogorsk, and these are the changes on the ground. This is the end of the 7th of July, and this is the end of the 8th of July. These changes were made based on reports that were published both by pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian sources, and it seems that the Russians, under the pressure of the armed forces of Ukraine, were forced to fall back from the city of Stepneogorsk further in the southern direction. Basically, the Russians lost everything they managed to take under complete control since the beginning of 2024. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye-bye.